G'day legends, I hope you're all amazing. On today's video, I wanted to do a follow-up to the demo that I did with this Fender Ultra Luxe Vintage HSS Strat. Loads of comments and questions about this guitar, and loads of you noticed that I'd taken this out on the road touring with Club Kabarett. I've also done a bunch of other gigs with this guitar, kind of most notably the first gig that I did with it, which was a Ragdoll show. So playing some melodic hard rock in drop C. Once I'd done the demo video for this guitar, I think there were a few things that jumped out at me as first impressions, and playing in the very controlled environment of a home studio is very different to playing live. But the first main impression I got from this was that it was like a nice blend of a vintage style guitar. You know, it's a really nice weight. There's a light checking on the body. It looks and feels like a guitar that has been played in a little bit, which I generally like super crispy, fresh guitars can be enjoyable, but I always like to get a guitar in my hands and get it a bit dirty and essentially personalize it just by playing it. So we went out and did a local show with that one, and you know, it's a red Strat. Red Strats look really, really cool. My buddy Stu Mackay got some really awesome photos from that show, and I got a little bit of video on there. The most important thing playing a guitar in that setup is that it can keep up with basically being battered, because I do play quite heavily. We tune low. There's lots of high gain distortion and noise on stage. And I need to do plenty of widdly shred stuff, but also have some nice articulated chords in there where I might be playing a low power chord with a drone note on the top. And it worked really, really well for that. And the longer scale and just the general strattiness out of this guitar, I think actually kind of helped it cut through a little bit. You know, a loud trio with a very loud drummer, an amazing singer who's got that kind of tenor range with lots of grit and some loud drop C bass guitar. You need to do everything you can to maintain some character in the guitars. So that worked really, really well. And just being a Strat, it's super comfy. So here's a little bit of footage from that show. Happy with that as a first experience. Played the guitar for the whole gig and it held up really well. The real test was going to be traveling and touring with the guitar. So a couple of days later, I flew out to Edinburgh in Scotland to play Fringe Festival with Club Kabarett. The main thing that I was concerned about was how stable the guitar was going to be. You know, the specs on this have a quarter sawn maple neck. You've got a rosewood board with stainless steel frets, a compound radius, locking tuners. On paper, it should be really stable, but I was still, let's not say concerned, but there was that little bit of anxiety there that I was going to take a guitar that's got a floating trem and I'd be having to tune it every other song or something like that. The main thing that did change going from winter in Australia to summer in Scotland, which granted weather-wise aren't that difference, but there was a big difference in the overall humidity, was that I needed to adjust the relief on the guitar. I do take a StewMac relief gauge with me when I tour with my guitars for that purpose. So when I got in, I actually let the guitar settle for a day or two and just get used to the climate. And then I had to tighten up the truss rod a little bit. That was kind of about it. Once I got it there and we'd done a few rehearsals and a few shows, the guitar definitely felt very consistent and settled. And I was able to play through the 10 to 15 minute pre-show that we do in the first couple of tunes, which really move around stylistically. There's things where you have to be playing heavy riffs, going into parts where you're using very delicate chords with spring reverb and tremolo, and other parts where you're basically just making weird guitar noises and underscoring what's happening. And it was pretty good for that. For a 2-point trem, locking tuners, I did file down the nut on the A string just a little bit because it was catching, but I'm going from 9 to 42s to 10 to 52s there. That's something I would do with any other guitar. And the guitar just felt very slick. I think that's the best way to describe it. It does remind me a little bit of my 1977 Strat that has had a whole lot of mods to it done. It's been re-radiused. It's also got stainless steel frets on there, totally new pickups. This copped some of that vibe, but it's a lot lighter than that guitar, and the neck profile is a little bit more forgiving. So I'll just show you a couple little parts of the show and how the guitar sounded.
Just like your body left the floor. And baby, got your name on the door. Forget what you
a tick for stability and consistency. We did over 20 shows there, and I did all but 2 shows with this guitar. Just one day I broke a string because I probably should have changed my strings the day before, so I flipped over to my rubato Lassie. And then again, when you're doing a long run of shows, sometimes it's just nice to change up what you're playing and how you're going about it. But in terms of stability of tuning and consistency of performance with the way it played and the way it sounded, at this price point, it should be delivering those things, right? And it did deliver those things, very similar to the Ultra 2 that I've got. But I think the main thing that is going to appeal to a lot of people with this, and why I'd encourage you to try this out if you're in the market for like a custom shop guitar, is this is probably the closest thing you can get to a production Fender that's got that customized feel about it. To me, having the very light relic on the finish, the nitro, but then again, the modern specs with the locking tuners, the stainless steel frets, the compound radius on there, it kind of feels like a vintage Strat that has been played and then modded for performance, but the relicing isn't overdone. And this is a weird paradox for me, is I like guitars that feel played in. I like old guitars, but I also have that thing where if there's going to be dings and scratches on there, I want to put them on my guitar. You know, I want that level of interaction between what I'm doing and the guitar. And there's things sometimes on my guitars where they have particular bumps or scratches that remind me of the gig that happened at, or the session that I was doing. So one thing that I think is kind of cool on this, you know, I wear a black jacket during the show, is that you can kind of see some of it has like rubbed off right in here, and that just kind of enhances the vibe to me. There's also a bunch of like lipstick all over the guitar, and I get quite close to the fire act on there, so I'm sure there's probably a little bit of ash, and maybe the finish copped a little bit too much heat on there. That's all part of the fun there, and also having a guitar that's relatively lightweight and comfortable is important for me, because stuff like this happens during the show. Cordy actually illustrated this point really, really well in a video. He talked about gigging the Ultra Luxe vintage Strat, so I'll just quote him right here.
Over time, where like the body starts to get a few more knocks, but your frets stay kind of pristine for a bit longer.
It really is nice having that sort of feeling where the more you play the guitar, the more worn in and just generally cool it gets, but the frets in particular aren't going to degrade anywhere near as fast. Once you've got the setup that you like on this thing, that element, which is so important to us as guitar players, is going to stay consistent. But then, you know, the guitar should age gracefully in your hands. It's a very, very interesting thing that Fender have gone for. And I did see a lot of comments where people didn't understand why it's called Ultra Luxe Vintage. And I think the wording that they've gone for is important there, where it's an Ultra Luxe first. You know, it is a modern Strat with those deluxe appointments on there, but then it has that vintage element with the finish. And again, for me, that's a best of both worlds approach. When it comes to something like a Strat, because Strats are made to be played, they're made to be hammered. There are so many iconic Strats out there that are worn and relic naturally. Think of Stevie Ray, Rory Gallagher, Gary Moore, everyone like that. You know, they had their favorite Strat that they just played and played and played. But sometimes with old guitars, they can just be old guitars. So I think if you were looking at getting something like this, and especially at the price point, it is very competitive in Australia anyway, compared to say getting a Sir or an Anderson or especially a Tyler, which are premiumly priced instruments. They're amazing instruments, nothing against them, but this definitely cops that vibe while sort of staying reasonable in that sub-custom shop price range. I'm going to pull up stumps for now. In conclusion, this guitar delivered the goods for me taking it on tour. I was really, really happy with the way it played, performed, and just the overall vibe. It's why I've been using it so much on the channel as well. I think it's awesome having the ability to walk into a music store and get a guitar that's a best of both worlds, vintage and modern style instrument from a major manufacturer like Fender. And the one thing I would really like to see Fender do is, this is very much a top tier pro instrument that serious players are going to want to consider. And if you are considering one, I definitely suggest going out and checking one out. But I'd love to see the compound radius neck with the stainless steel frets trickle down to the player range. Like, how good would it be to have a player Luxe or something like that, maybe somewhere in the sub 2,000 Australian dollar range, where you can get all the goodness of a player's Strat, but you get these deluxe features on there. So hopefully Fender will do that at some point. If they listen to people like me at all, I don't know, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. If you like what I'm doing here on the channel, please check out the video description for various ways to support me, or you can just like the video, subscribe it, or tell one of your mates about it. Otherwise, go and grab your guitars and make some glorious guitar noises today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.